Morning, Mr. Simpson.
Good morning, Mr. Brewer.
Mr. Simpson, since Friday, have you reviewed any documents to prepare for today's session?
No.
Have you reviewed any photographs?
No.
Other than your attorneys, have you spoken with anyone concerning your deposition here today?
No.
Okay. Has anyone read anything to you?
No.
Okay. I want to just go back to where we ended on Friday. We were talking about you coming to Rockingham and being advised by either Detective Phillips or some other detective regarding blood that was found at the Rockingham premises. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Was it your understanding that Rockingham, when you got there, that Rockingham was declared a crime scene?
I didn't have an understanding one way or the other.
When you got back to Rockingham from Chicago, did you see any yellow tape anywhere on your property?
Not that I noticed.
When you first got back to Rockingham at some point, were you handcuffed?
Yes.
Can you describe how that happened?
I got out of the car, I started walking towards my front door, and a police officer said he couldn't let me go in. And Mr. Simpson, I've been told I need to handcuff you, or words to that effect.
Okay. Now, you got out of the car and you were walking towards your front door. Did you have your grip with you at the time?
Yes.
Did you have any other luggage with you at the time?
In the car, we were, yes, there was. I assumed everybody else was getting out with me because they wouldn't let us drive on, and they were getting out with luggage, and I just was trying to get in the house, so.
Okay. The only luggage that you had on your person, though, was the grip that you were carrying.
On my person as I got out of the car, yes.
Okay. And were you expecting to be arrested when you got back to Rockingham?
No.
Were you expecting to be handcuffed when you got back to Rockingham?
No.
At the time that you arrived at Rockingham, were you aware of any information that the police had which had a tendency to implicate your involvement in these crimes?
No.
When you were handcuffed, what did you say, if anything?
I don't know. I think I inquired, what are you doing? What's going on here?
And what did he say?
I don't recall. He just said he was following orders. I shouldn't be saying this because I don't really recall the conversation the big officer and I had at that point. All I know is I was kind of bewildered.
Okay. Was this a uniform officer?
That's correct.
Was this a black uniform officer?
That's correct.
And as you were walking up the driveway when he stopped you?
I think he stopped the car and just walked up the driveway with me.
Okay. And at that point he handcuffed you?
I believe so, yes.
Do you recall protesting or yelling or saying anything when you were handcuffed?
Yelling?
Yes.
I don't believe so, no.
The only thing you recall saying was something...
What's going on?
What's going on?
What is this about? What are you doing this? Words to that effect, yes.
Okay. And do you recall anything at all that the police officer said to you?
No, not really.
Okay. Do you recall saying anything else to the police officer after you were handcuffed other than what's going on?
I knew I wanted to talk to somebody because he wasn't in charge, and I guess once again, I'm real sketchy here, but I'm assuming that he's...
Don't assume.
I can't assume. I know I want to find out. I need to talk to somebody that was in charge.
I assume that you were surprised when you were handcuffed.
Yes.
Would shock be a better word or better description of how you felt?
I think I was already in shock.
Well, in terms of you being handcuffed, that had certain implications in your mind, didn't it?
My mind was where my kids was and what had happened. That was probably the prevalent thing that was on my mind.
Okay.
And, I thought this was just, I didn't know what this was. I just wanted to talk to someone in charge.
Okay, you wanted to find out what happened.
Yeah, what was going on. And
you felt, as the ex-husband of Nicole Brown Simpson, that you had a right to obtain information relative to her death. Is that correct?
I don't think any of those thoughts went into my head like you're saying. All I know is that Nicole had been murdered, from what I understood. My kids were somewhere. My oldest daughter was in a bad way. I had no idea how my other son was. Police were at my house, and I was, other than that, I can't tell you what process my mind was going through.
Okay, so you were really focused on your family and your kids and just the loss of Nicole when you entered the Rockingham.
I don't know what I was focused on. I just wanted to know what was going on, and focus may have been what I wasn't. It was focused.
Well, the last thing on your mind was the fact that you were going to be handcuffed or arrested when you got back to
That's
Rockingham.
correct.
Now, at some point after you were handcuffed, did you ask that the handcuffs be removed?
Yes.
Who did you ask?
I think my lawyers had gotten to me by then, and they went to find who would take them off or something, and they were removed.
Okay. Did your lawyers come over to the location where you were being handcuffed?
I don't think so. I think after they handcuffed me, I went and stood by a dollhouse, and then things started happening. People were coming and going, and I was trying to, I knew Skip was supposed to be there. I knew Skip was there with me. And I was just, I don't know, I was just, whatever was happening was happening.
Okay. So after you were handcuffed, you went over and stood by a dollhouse by yourself?
No, I think a police officer was there.
Okay. And then at any point, did you ever personally ask that the handcuffs be removed?
I asked the guy, why is you handcuffing me? He says he was just doing what he was ordered. And I said, well, find who's in charge. And evidently somebody went off to find who was in charge. By the time that person came up, my lawyers was there, and they took the handcuffs off me.
Okay. So you asked the uniformed police officer to find someone who's in charge, correct?
Something to that effect, because he said he was only doing what he was told to do.
Okay. After you made that request, did someone come over to you and talk to you who you believed to be in charge at that point?
At some point, I can't tell you when, Van Adder showed up and consequently took my handcuffs off.
Okay. You were still handcuffed when Van Adder showed up?
Correct.
Did you personally ask Van Adder to have the handcuffs removed?
I believe my lawyer did.
Okay. You didn't ask him, though?
I believe my lawyer did.
Approximately how long were you at the Rockingham premises before you were transported downtown to give a statement?
I have no idea.
Was it a matter of a half hour, a couple hours, 3 hours?
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay. Do you remember anything else you did other than stand by the dollhouse being handcuffed before you were transported downtown?
No.
Do you remember talking to Detective Van Adder at all relative to the facts and circumstances concerning Nicole's death?
While he's still at Rockingham.
Yeah, all this is while you were still at Rockingham before you were transported down to the Los Angeles Police Department.
I remember Van Adder, and I can't really recall what the conversation was about. I know it was about the handcuffs and about talking to the police or an interview or something.
Okay.
But my lawyers were there doing most of the talking at that time.
Were you standing in close proximity to where Van Adder was talking to your lawyers?
I believe so. They kind of moved around. They were there. They moved. I believe at some points in times I was.
Did you overhear some portions of their discussion?
Not really, no.
Was it your understanding there was some discussion relative to you going down to the police station giving a statement?
Yes.
Do you recall any discussion between you and Detective Van Adder concerning blood that was found at Rockingham?
Van Adder, not really. He may have said something to my lawyer about stuff there, but I can't recall. I don't really recall.
Do you recall overhearing some discussion between Van Adder and your lawyers concerning blood found at Rockingham?
I just knew, I can't recall. I know one guy said something to me, and then they were talking about something, and it was my impression when I was going downtown that blood or something was found around my property. That was my impression. Exactly how I got that impression was just whatever was going on during that period of time.
When you say some guy mentioned something to me, you're referring now to the Phillips or the other detective's
Yes.
statement to you?
Yeah.
Did that statement also include or imply the notion that blood was found inside your Bronco?
I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. They were just saying something was there, and I wanted the handcuffs off, and they wanted to talk.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that at the time that you left Rockingham to go down to the Los Angeles Police Department to give a statement, that the only areas where you had any information relative to the location of blood was on the driveway at Rockingham?
I don't know if I had, I saw things there. So,
You say things, white cards?
I don't know if they were white, they were markers though. And outside of that, and what this guy said to me and whatever was being said at the time, that wasn't my focus.
Okay. Well, you understood the white markers that you observed were identifying blood or some type of evidence on the driveway, didn't you?
No.
You had no idea whatsoever?
No, not really.
Okay. I mean, you've seen white markers used like that in television and news reports in the past, haven't you?
I don't know if I have.
Mr. Simpson, as you were still at Rockingham and became aware that blood was found on your property, did you begin to make some association in your mind between the cut that you had, or the blood that you had observed the previous evening on the 12th and the blood that was found at Rockingham on the driveway?
No.
No association whatsoever?
No.
Didn't even cross your mind that possibly that was blood that you left the previous evening on the 12th?
Nothing about the blood crossed my mind at all. I was thinking about my kids and what might have happened to Nicole.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, at the time that you were at Rockingham thinking about what might have happened with Nicole, you understood that she was probably murdered, right?
Yeah, I think I was trying to digest that, yes.
Okay. And at that time, you didn't know whether the means of committing the murder were a gun, a knife, strangulation, anything of that nature, did you?
I don't know if I thought about it at that time, but I didn't, correct.
Okay. Do you recall thinking about how she was murdered?
At that time, no.
Now, when you went from Rockingham down to the police department, you went there specifically to give a statement to the police, is that correct?
No.
Well, what was your purpose going down to the Los Angeles Police
To do whatever they wanted me to do so that I could, go and see my kids and find out what
Well,
was
did
going
you think you were going down there to make some type of identification of Nicole's body?
on. I didn't know.
You had no idea why you were going to the police department?
I knew they wanted to talk to me, but I didn't know what else they wanted to do, no.
Okay. I mean, you understood they wanted to talk to you because you were possibly a suspect, didn't you, Mr. Simpson?
Yeah, I think that probably crossed my mind, yes.
Okay. And then as you were driving down to the police department, you were beginning to think about the events of the previous evening because you knew you were going to be asked about those events, right?
No, that's incorrect.
Well, did you think about what you had done the previous evening as you were driving down to the police department?
No.
Did you begin to make an association in the car between the blood that was reported being found at Rockingham and the blood you noticed on your finger the previous evening?
No.
Made no association whatsoever?
No.
Did you begin to think about any of your activities in the last 24 hours as you were in the car headed down to the police department?
No.
What was the focus of your thoughts, if any, as you were en route to the police department to give a statement in connection with these murders?
Well, he didn't ever say that he knew he was going to give a statement. He knew they were going to talk to him.
Let me rephrase it. What was your thought process, if any, as you were headed down to the police department to talk to the police in connection with these murders?
My kids.
And your kids meaning what?
All of my kids.
Well, how about...
Where they were, I probably thought if, my older kids, my younger kids, they were all right. And I was just trying to, I don't know if I digested that Nicole was dead. It was just kind of a hard thing to digest.
When you say your kids not knowing whether they were taken care of, had you made arrangements to take care of your children before you are en route back from Chicago?
I think when I talked to my daughter, they were going to go get them and take them to Laguna.
Okay. So, go ahead.
But my daughter was in sort of a bad way. My older daughter was sort of in a bad way, so I was a little concerned about her too. Not little, just as much as concerned about her.
I'm sorry, though.
I was pretty concerned about my older daughter because when I spoke to her, she was in a bad way.
Did you specifically ask Arnell to take care of the children?
I think they said they were going to get them. I said, go get them immediately. And it may have been mentioned that they were going to take them to Laguna.
Okay.
I'm not really sure if that was mentioned in that particular conversation.
Laguna meaning the Browns?
Yes.
And I take it you had great confidence in the Browns' ability to care for your children at that time?
At that time, yes.
Okay. So you knew that if they were successfully transported to the Browns, they would be well taken care of by family members?
Yeah, they are my family, but their family was a lot closer than my family, so
Okay.
yes, I was confident in that.
And after you had asked Arnell to make arrangements to transport the kids down to Laguna, did you ever obtain any confirmation that in fact they had arrived in Laguna?
I don't know about a ride, but I knew that they had gone. AC had taken them and evidently had gotten them there.
Did you learn that before you got to Rockingham?
I don't know.
You have no memory whatsoever with respect to when you learned that AC had transported the kids down to Laguna?
No, but I knew as the day went on that he had, and I don't know if Skip Taft or Kathy Rand or somebody else had communicated that to me.
Okay. So I take it that once you learned that AC had transported the kids to Laguna, you were satisfied that the kids, for the time being, were taken care of?
Yeah, the minute ACRNL had gotten them, I would have assumed that they were in good hands.
And did you learn that information before you left to go down to the police department to talk to the police?
I don't recall.
You don't know when that was in relationship to talking to the police?
No,
You don't know whether it's before or after?
no.
Now, when you got down to the police department, you agreed to talk to Detectives Van Adder and Lang, is that correct? Without the presence of your lawyer?
Yeah,
And, Mr. Simpson, you knew that in talking to them, they were going to question you relative to the murder of your wife and another man, is that correct?
I assumed that would have been the subject, yes.
And I take it this is the first time in your life that anyone had ever questioned you in connection with a murder. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were going to be questioned without your lawyer, is that correct?
Well, yes.
And you understood, sir, the seriousness of the conversation or the statement that you were going to have with the detectives, right?
For the most part.
And in fact, before they even started, they read you your constitutional rights. Is that true?
The second time, they had read me the rights at Rockingham.
Okay. When did they first read you your rights at Rockingham?
Whenever Van Adder or somebody came up.
Was it Van Adder that read you your rights at
I
Rockingham?
believe so.
Were you
I'm
still
not 100% sure of that.
I'm sorry. Did you clean
I'm
your
not
hands?
100% sure of that, but I believe it was Van Adder, yes.
And were you still handcuffed at the time that they read you your rights?
Yes.
And you understood those rights, correct, Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
You understood the implication of Detective Van Adder reading you those rights, didn't you?
What do you mean by the implication? I don't understand the implication.
Well, that anything that you said to Detective Van Adder or Lang or anyone else could be used against you. You understood that, right?
Yeah.
And then when you got down to the Los Angeles Police Department, they read you your constitutional rights again. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. And you didn't have any questions with respect to what it meant when they read those rights to you, right?
Well, at one point, they started reading the rights, and I said something to them, and they stopped the tape, and then they started over again. They explained something to me, and then they started over again.
Well, on the tape that we have a transcript of, you were read your constitutional rights. Is
On
that
that tape, the second time they started it, yes.
true? Okay. And at the end of reading you your rights, they asked you whether you understood those rights, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated to them that you did understand those rights. Is that true?
Correct.
And you were being honest with them when you told them that. Is that true?
Correct.
And in fact, you understood, Mr. Simpson, that anything that you said during the course of that statement could and would be used against you if you were tried in this case. You understood that.
Yes.
And you understood that it was very important in connection with giving this statement to be honest and truthful about the questions and answers that you gave. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you also understood that it was important to be accurate about the information that you provided to these detectives during the course of their examination. Is that true?
Yeah, we talked about that, and I said I'll be as accurate as I can. I was a little tired at the time.
Okay, but you understood in your mind that it was important to be accurate, right?
Well, I told them I would be as accurate as I could.
Okay. And they had asked you questions, as you testified earlier, off the tape and then on the tape, and then I think they turned it off again. Is that true?
That's correct.
It didn't matter to you whether it was being tape recorded or it wasn't being tape recorded. You were going to be honest in your answers. Is that true?
I would be honest and as accurate as I could be, and it didn't matter to me if it was taped or not.
Irrespective of whether that tape was running, you were going to be as accurate as possible.
As I could be. I was tired, and that was a big concern that both sides had at the time. And yes, I could be as accurate as I could be.
Well, did you ever tell the detectives that you were concerned about your ability to provide an accurate statement because you were tired?
They said it to me, and I said I'd try the best I could because they really wanted to talk, and I really wanted to get out of there. And as I said before, that's why they stopped the tape the first time. And Van Adder said, "Hey, OJ, we're just trying to get you to go home. So, you know, do the best you can." I said, "I'll do the best I can." So, but, you know, they stopped it because they said something about having a lawyer present.
Was there anything that you were aware of at the time that you provided the statement which caused you to have a inability to recollect significant events from the night before?
I was tired, and I was in, I gather, shock. But I thought I'd do the best job I can do, and that's what I attempted to do.
If you weren't on any medication, were you?
Other than maybe some Motrin, but other
Does
than
that affect
no.
your memory?
I doubt it.
Does it affect your ability to recall events for the preceding 24 hours?
Certainly no more so than not sleeping and being tired and other circumstances.
Doesn't affect your ability to provide honest and truthful information, does it?
Not Motrin. I don't believe so.
Okay. So other than the fact that you were tired and perhaps somewhat in shock from losing your ex-wife, you can't think of any other reasons why you wouldn't be able to recall significant details from the preceding 24 hours. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a tough question to answer because I would have no idea what's significant.
How about your whereabouts at the time of the murders?
I didn't know what time the murders were.
You had no information about that, right?
Correct.
So you didn't know whether those murders occurred at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You had no idea.
Well, I knew they couldn't have occurred before, a little before 9 o'clock. So I knew they couldn't have occurred before then.
Okay. So you knew that the murders had to occur at least after 9 o'clock. Is that true?
Correct.
When you spoke with Sidney, right?
Correct.
And did you know whether there was they occurred before 12?
As I told you, I had no idea.
Okay. So as far as you knew, you could have been at Rockingham in the limousine on the way to the airport, in the air on the way to Chicago, or in fact in Chicago at the time of the murders, based upon what you knew at the time you gave this statement. Is that a fair statement?
Correct.
Okay. And also, when you gave this statement, Mr. Simpson, you had no information that blood from the murder was left at the Bundy crime scene. True?
Yes.
And you had no information, Mr. Simpson, with respect to how Nicole and Mr. Goldman were in fact murdered when you gave this statement to the police. Is that true?
That is correct, yes.
The only information that you had relative to any evidence was a statement from either Detective Phillips or some other detective that blood had been found at Rockingham.
Yeah, found
True?
there, found here. Yes.
What do you mean found here?
Rockingham.
At Rockingham.
Yes, he says, you know, there's blood there, there's blood here, we got a problem, was the way he worded it. Well, we got sort of a problem, was the way he worded it.
Prior to actually sitting down and talking with Detectives Van Adder and Lang, did you ever draw any association in your mind between the blood that was reportedly found at Rockingham and the blood that you had noticed on your pinky the preceding evening?
No,
Not once did you think about that?
no, not at that time, no.
Okay. Now, Mr. Simpson, one of the areas that you were questioned about during the course of this talk or statement that you gave to the police was a cut that was on your left joint of your middle finger. Is that correct?
During the course of the whole interview?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And the reason why that topic came up was because Detective Van Adder or Langer both had observed that you had a cut on the left joint, the joint of your left middle finger. True?
No.
Okay, well, did you volunteer that information?
No.
Do you recall the context in which the discussion came up?
They asked me about a bandage I had.
On your middle finger?
What was on my, yeah, on my hand.
This is the cut that you claim you had in Chicago, right?
Correct.
Okay. And they saw a bandage on your left middle finger at that time?
I believe so, yes.
They asked you about that bandage?
Yes.
Was this before or after they had told you that they found blood at Rockingham?
Well, as I said, I didn't know, I don't believe Van Adder or Lang ever told me that.
That they found blood at Rockingham?
Yes.
Okay. You knew that they found blood at Rockingham because you were told earlier by Detective Phillips or some other detective at the time that they identified this bandage in your finger, right?
But the guy said that to me, yes.
Okay. When you say the guy said that to me, what do you mean by that?
The guy, it wasn't a girl, it was a guy.
The guy said, are we talking about the blood that you were told about or the bandage on your finger?
What was his question, please?
Let me just re-ask. I want to make sure we're clear on the same wavelength. Someone identified or pointed out that you had a bandage on your middle finger, right?
Someone asked me about it, yes.
Okay, and that was in the context of giving a statement to the police, right?
Well, it's not in the thing, but yes, it was in the context of just talking to the police.
Okay. And you knew at the time that you were having this discussion about a wound to your left middle finger that blood had been found at Rockingham. You knew that?
Yeah, the guy told me there was blood here and blood there.
Okay. And when you say the guy told me, we're now talking about Phillips or
Yes.
some other detective, right?
Yes.
And at the time that they asked you about the cut on your finger, they had asked you how you did it, right?
Correct.
And I take it that you knew the implication of that question at the time you were being asked about it.
I wasn't thinking about implications. I was just trying to answer their questions.
Okay. And the question about how you cut your finger was asked of you in the context of discussing blood that was found at Rockingham, wasn't it?
I don't believe so. I think they just asked me a question and I answered it. I don't, if you let me read the thing, I can tell you
Okay,
it was
well, why
in
don't
that
we-
context.
Why don't we go to your statement? Page 15.
I don't know. Bring up my exhibits.
Okay?
Has it been marked? Has it been marked?
It has not been marked.
Do you have copies of it?
Well, mine's marked. We could. Is yours unmarked, Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Okay. Can we make? Maybe we'll go off the record, make copies of yours. And we'll
Sure,
just
of
mark
course.
them as exhibit. All right.
Multiple copies.
Sure.
Let's go off the record for a minute.
We are going off the record now, and the time is approximately 9:42.
Mike, you wanted copies?
We are back on the record now, and the time is approximately 9:46.
Okay. Mr. Simpson, we have made copies, and we're going to mark as next in order, 101, I believe, the statement that you gave to the police department, and that statement is dated 6/13/94. Time of the interview is noted to be military time, 13:35 hours. When's the last time you reviewed this statement?
And other than your discussions with counsel, you can certainly answer that.
I don't want to know when you talked about it with your lawyers. I want to know when's the last time you reviewed the statement.
Maybe 2 weeks ago.
Did you take a look at it over the weekend?
No,
Did you glance through it over the weekend at all?
no.
Do you have a copy, your own personal copy of the statement?
If I do, I don't know where it is.
Now, we're talking about the question that you were asked relative to the cut on your hand, your finger, during the course of this statement. And by the way, Mr. Simpson, when you were giving this statement to the Los Angeles Police Department, you understood or believed that you were the #1 target in connection with this murder investigation. Isn't that true?
I don't think I had those kind of thoughts at the time, though.
Yeah. Let's turn to page 31 of your statement, Mr. Simpson. Look on lines 15 through 18. We're reading from line 15. You're asked, you understand the reason we're talking to you is because you're the ex-husband. Suspect, I know. I'm the #1 target. Did you say that, Mr. Simpson?
Yes, I always figure that husbands or ex-husbands are, but I didn't have that thought process going at this time when they were interviewing me earlier.
Okay, well,
Until he told me
when you
while he was talking to me.
when you told the detectives during the course of an interview in connection with these 2 murder investigations that you were the #1 target, were you accurately reporting your state of mind?
I don't think so. I think just from reading books and everything, a husband and somebody is always a target. I didn't know if they had someone else they were talking to. I didn't know if I was the #1 target in this case. I just know in all cases, normally, that is the case, that they talk to the husbands or boyfriends.
Okay, so just from your life experience, you know that in cases where there is a wife or ex-wife killed, that the ex-husband is always a target of a murder investigation. Is that true?
A target, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you were Nicole's ex-husband, right?
Yeah, but I didn't know if they had someone else that they were talking to or not.
Well, irrespective of whether they had 10 other people they were talking to, based upon what you just told us, you understood that you were a target in connection with this murder investigation.
At the time, I just knew they had to talk to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in addition to wanting to talk to you, you knew that there was blood that they found in Rockingham.
By this time, yes.
Okay. Now, going to page 15, Mr. Simpson, starting at line 8, they ask you, okay, how did you get that injury on your hand, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that's the injury to your left middle finger at the joint. Is that true?
Correct.
And then you go on to describe what you did in Chicago.
Yes.
And moving down to line 17, or actually 16, they say, is that how you cut it? And you answer, it was cut before, but I think I just opened it up again. See that statement, Mr. Simpson? Did I read that correctly?
You didn't read all of it, but what you read was correct.
Well, let me read all of it so we're clear. I'm not sure, I didn't feel it. Did I read all of it?
Yes.
And Mr. Simpson, during the course of talking to these detectives in connection with this murder investigation, where you were asked about the origin of a cut to your left finger, you told them that it was cut before. True?
I told him I wasn't sure, and that's what I believe that this statement said. I saw some blood the night before, and since I didn't feel anything or see where it was coming from, I gathered the next day when they started asking me questions, I assumed it may have been from the same place, but I didn't see a cut or I didn't see where the blood was coming from, but I assumed I was cut.
Okay, well, you've testified already that the blood that you saw was on your pinky, correct?
Yes.
You didn't even see a cut on your pinky,
I
correct?
didn't see a cut anywhere.
Yeah. And that was the night before, you didn't see a cut anywhere.
Correct.
You didn't see any blood from your left middle finger, did you?
No, I just saw blood on the counter.
I mean, you didn't see blood anywhere near your left middle finger, true?
Well, that's relatively near. I guess if it's on your pinky, so it's near your middle finger, yes.
Okay. But that's the closest that you observed blood on your hand was on your pinky relative to your left middle finger. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you told the police that you cut it before, were you guessing?
No, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was doing.
So in the context of talking about the origin of this cut during this murder investigation, you started guessing about the origin?
No, I told him I cut it in Chicago, but it may have been cut the night before because I saw blood, and there was no other cuts on my hand at that time, so I assumed that it may have come from the same area.
Mr. Simpson, did you cut your finger on June 12, 1994, the left middle finger at the joint?
Not that I know of.
Well, when you say not that I know of, are you still uncertain, as you sit here today, whether you cut the left middle finger at the joint area on June 12, 1994?
It's not that I know of.
When you say not that I know of, are you able to definitively rule it out one way or the other?
I didn't see any cuts, but I saw blood, a drop of blood on my counter and a drop of blood on one of my fingers. I didn't know where it came from, so not that I know of.
When you were talking with these detectives, did you assume that the cut that you had received, strike that, when you were talking with these detectives in connection with this murder investigation, did you assume that the blood that you observed on your pinky was also blood that you had dripped all over the driveway at Rockingham?
Wait a minute, don't answer that question. Dripped all over the driveway? No.
Dripped on the driveway.
You know, it was hard to assume anything. I don't think I was assuming anything. They were asking questions, some questions I had no answers, and I didn't know the answers to. So, and I was just trying to answer them as best I could under the circumstances.
And you knew at the time that you were being asked these questions, it was in connection with a murder investigation.
You asked that 15 times.
14.
Okay, I agree, 14.
Okay, now Mr. Simpson, going on. You talk about on line 24,
Same page?
same page. I recall bleeding at my house. This is when they've asked you. Let me read 22 so we have it in context. That's okay. Do you recall bleeding at all in your truck in the Bronco? Your answer, I recall bleeding at my house, and then I went to the Bronco. The last thing I did before I left, when I was rushing, I went and got my phone out of the Bronco. And they, which is the detectives. Subject, well, whatever that is, reading through line 28. Now, the recollection that you identify on line 24, recalling that you bled at your house, is that what you've already described to us, the blood on the pinky and the blood drop on the countertop?
Yes.
When you were talking with the detectives, did you then recall bleeding on your driveway?
No.
Did you recall bleeding in the foyer?
No.
By the way, Mr. Simpson, the areas, you know where they found blood as you sit here today. You know where the blood was found on your property. Is that true?
That's correct.
And all of the areas where they found blood were areas that you were in on June 12, 1994, that you had walked past or walked over. Is that true?
At some time or another, yes.
And for example, you had walked up the driveway that evening. Is that true?
Correct.
And you had walked in the foyer. Is that true?
Correct.
And they found blood in the foyer, right?
Correct.
And they found blood in the front entrance area, right before the foyer. Is that true? Where the benches are.
I believe so.
And they found blood on the driveway, relatively, strike that. They found blood on the driveway near the Bentley, true?
That's correct.
And they found blood at the entrance gate on Rockingham. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
Those are all areas where you were, right?
I went all over the place. I was upstairs, I was downstairs, I was in my living room, I was in my washroom, I was all over my house.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, they didn't find blood, for example, out in the tennis court, right?
correct.
And you weren't out at the tennis court anyway that evening, were you?
No,
They didn't find blood out near the Ashford gate, did they?
not that I know of.
Now, you also mentioned, Mr. Simpson, that you were getting your phone out of your Bronco. You see that on line 26?
Yes,
Now, you've testified that you weren't, in fact, getting your phone. You were getting a case for your phone. Is that true?
the guts of my phone, the rest of my phone stuff. Yes.
Excuse me?
Yes, the case and the rest of the stuff that goes with my cell phone.
Okay, but when you use the term phone, you already had your phone with you, didn't you?
Yes, I believe it was already in my bag.
Okay. So what you were telling the police was inaccurate. You didn't get your phone out of there. You're getting your phone case out of there.
That's correct.
And when you went to the Bronco to get your phone case out of the Bronco before you were leaving, did you, to your knowledge, touch any of the foot pedals in the car, either the accelerator or the brake?
No,
Did you touch the inside of the driver's side door?
possibly.
Okay, and do you recall the nature of touching the door, what happened that would cause you to come in contact with the door?
You know, just opening the door and getting in the car. Normally you kind of use your hands, steering wheel, the door thing.
Do you recall getting inside the car?
Yeah, I leaned in. I had to lean in.
What
I
did
ended
you-
up getting it, and I ended up getting a jacket.
Did you physically get inside the car?
I'm sure my body had to be inside the car to an extent, yes.
Okay, well, did you get into the car and sit in the driver's seat?
I don't believe so.
Okay, when you're talking about getting in the car, you're talking about leaning across the console to the passenger side seat and grabbing your phone case?
That's right.
Okay, do you recall coming into contact with the dashboard?
I don't recall any of that, no.
Do you recall coming into contact with the console?
Recall? No, I don't recall it.
Do you recall coming in contact with the passenger side seat?
I'm sure I must have, but I don't recall it, no.
Did you rest your hand on the seat, your left hand at all, in order to get the travel case for your phone?
I may have.
Where was the windbreaker located inside the car?
In the back seat.
Okay, did you have to climb into the back seat to get the windbreaker?
No, I just kind of leaned. I don't know exactly how I did it. It was just on the back seat behind the driver.
Okay, you're making a motion with your right hand. Do you recall reaching into the back seat with your right hand? to
No,
get
but
the
I'm
windbreaker?
right-handed, so I would think I may have done that.
Okay, that would be a logical and customary way for you to grab something with your right hand because you're right-handed.
Could you slow down just a little bit, please? That would be a,
Logical and customary way for you to grab something if you're reaching for it in your back seat.
Yeah, my glass I keep here. That would be logical, but not necessarily. You know, I grab things with my left hand also.
Sure.
But, yeah, I'm thinking most cases, yes.
How about opening up the Bronco door? Would you typically grab the door handle with your left hand if you were going to insert a key with your right?
If it was locked, probably yes.
Okay, that would be the normal and customary way in which you would open the door.
That's correct.
Okay. And the door handle on the Bronco, is it a door handle that you have to reach under with the top side of your hand facing the door and lift up the latch to open the door?
I don't recall.
You don't recall the mechanism that's on the door in order to open the door?
Yes.
Going to page 31 of your statement, Mr. Simpson. Going to line 17 and 18, where you make the statement, I know I'm the #1 target, and now you're telling me I got blood all over the place. See that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Simpson, you were responding to information that was provided to you by these detectives that reaffirm what you already had been told, that there was blood that was found in Rockingham. Is that true?
Yes.
And at that point, did you begin to draw an association between the blood on your pinky and possibly blood that was found at Rockingham that these detectives were telling you about?
The blood on my pinky and the blood found at Rockingham. I don't think that that's what I was thinking at the time. I understood at that time why they were talking to me, more so than I probably had earlier.
Well, going down to line 27 and 28, says, they ask you, is that your blood that you dripped? They just flat out ask you whether that's your blood, don't they? Right?
Well, you just read the question.
Did I read it correctly?
Yes.
Is that how you interpreted the question?
How?
They were
I don't-
asking
I don't
was your
understand.
blood, right?
Well, that's
Is
right.
that your blood that dripped there?
Okay.
That's the way it sounds to me.
And then you tell them on line 28, if it's dripped, it's what I dripped, running around trying to leave, right?
Yes. If it's mine, that's what it would have been,
Okay.
as far as
And-
I knew.
Well, then you drew an association between the cut that you saw, the blood you saw the previous evening, and the blood that they were reporting to you that they found in Rockingham. Is that right?
Well, I knew I saw a drip of blood that I assumed came from me. And if this was my blood, I would have probably was making an assumption that that's what it would have come from.
Okay.
But I wasn't, obviously I didn't know, but it was just an assumption on my part.
You were making what you believed was a logical assumption that, you know, within 24 hours, you were in the kitchen and observed blood on the countertop and blood on your pinky. And then you're being told by these detectives that there was blood found on your driveway.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how logical it was. It's just, if that was the case, that was the case, because I didn't see any blood anywhere else. And I certainly had luggage and stuff that I was handling quite freely during that period of time.
Well, you didn't think it was Cato's blood, did you?
I didn't know.
Well, you didn't even suggest to them it was Cato's blood, right?
They wouldn't ask me about Cato.
Okay, and if you thought it was Cato's blood, would that have been something you would have suggested to him?
Don't answer that. That calls for pure speculation.
Did you have any basis to believe that it was Cato's blood?
I didn't have any basis to believe it was mine or anybody's blood, for that matter. I didn't know. I was just trying to answer their questions when they asked me questions and be as helpful as I could
So when
under
you
the circumstances.
when you acknowledge to them that if it's dripped, it's what I dripped running around trying to leave, that you had no basis in your mind to tell them
That's
that
argument.
statement?
Don't answer
No, he
that.
just said he had no basis to believe it was his blood.
Well, that's your interpretation of what he said. That isn't what I think what he said, and that question's argumentative, and he's not going to answer that one.
Well, Mr. Simpson, did you have a basis to believe it was Arnell's blood?
No,
Did you have a basis to believe it was anyone else's blood other than yours?
I didn't have a basis really to believe it was mine.
Okay,
I
so
didn't,
you're
no.
telling us now that you didn't have a basis to believe it was your blood?
Correct.
Okay, so when you told the investigating officer that if it dripped, it's what I dripped running around trying to leave, your testimony today is that in your mind you had no basis, no factual basis to provide that statement. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
At no time did you ever draw an association between the blood on your pinky and blood that was found at Rockingham the following day?
You've already asked him that. He's already told you he had an association.
Mr.
That was
Mr. Baker, he
that
has
was
not
what he
said
read.
that. He has said he has no factual basis to provide the statement. That's why I'm going into it.
No. Well, that's
He
your
said it twice.
interpretation. But he said when you read it to him and you talked about the pinky, you've already been over that.
He has said he has no factual basis. That's all I want to
That's
find
right.
out.
He doesn't have any factual basis. They didn't tell him anything.
Well, you knew that you cut your finger. You're the only one that knew that the night before, right, Mr. Simpson?
I assumed I did.
Okay. As far as you knew, Cato didn't know that you cut your finger, right?
I didn't know what any of these people knew. I didn't have any knowledge of any of it. I assumed I cut my finger because I saw a spot of blood. Period. Outside of that, I didn't know anything.
Okay. And my question to you is, given the fact that on the 12th you observed blood in your finger, did you use that as a factual basis to tell the police officers that if it's dripped, it's what I dripped running around?
Not really. I just didn't know what. They were saying that there were blood in places, and I thought I could have possibly have done it, but I didn't know because I didn't, other than that one drop of blood and what was on my finger, I didn't see anything. You know, I didn't see anything, and at that time, I wasn't making any assumptions one way or another. I was just trying to be as honest as I could with the police officers.
Were you being honest with them when you told them that if it's your blood, it was the blood you dripped running around?
It could have been. It could have been, yes.
When you say you didn't see anything, are you talking about you didn't see anything on the driveway?
I didn't see anything other than a drip of blood on a counter and on my finger. I didn't see any blood anywhere at any time that evening.
Okay. And when you say that you didn't see anything, the blood in the driveway, you didn't see blood in the driveway at all that evening, right?
No,
Nor in the foyer, right?
no.
As you sit here today, Mr. Simpson, do you believe you reopened a cut on the left middle finger?
I have no idea what happened.
And what do you mean while he was in the police station? Do you mean?
Let me clean up the question. Mr. Simpson, as you sit here today, do you believe that when you cut your finger in Chicago, you reopened a cut that already existed on your left middle finger at the joint?
I don't really have any belief on that. I just know that I never saw a cut on my hand.
Did you ever get a tetanus shot
I'm
on the
sure
week
I
of
have.
the 13th?
On what, pardon me?
On the week of the 13th, did you ever go and get a tetanus shot?
I may have, yes.
Do you have a specific recollection of doing that?
No.
Okay, when you say you may have, what's the basis for that statement?
I believe Heisinger was doing some things, and I don't know exactly what he did. You know, I was kind of in a little bit of space then. I saw seemed to me, I saw a lot of doctors were dicking around with me that week. So I don't recall if anybody gave me a shot or not.
So are you just guessing when you said that?
I think I said I believe I did. I didn't think I did. I didn't know for sure. I
Well,
don't really know. I
yeah.
believe it might have happened that week.
When you say I believe that might have happened, do you have a recollection of somebody putting a needle in your arm and injecting you with what you believe was a tetanus shot?
I believe needles going into my arm. I have a recollection of that week of numerous needles going to my arm, but I was sort of in space a lot that week, so I don't recall exactly what they were doing.
Well, do you remember whether they're injecting you with something or pulling something out of you, for example, blood?
I knew they pulled some blood out. I don't even recall if Paradas gave me a shot or not, other than I knew he went in a few times with needles. So, and I really don't recall exactly what he did.
Do you recall asking anyone for a tetanus shot?
No,
Do you recall anyone suggesting you should get a tetanus shot?
I don't have any recollection of that, no.